Hello. So, welcome back. We're going to talk now about. We've seen how we can pass arguments back and forth, get and set properties of objects. We've seen how we can get two objects talking to one another. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to get an array of objects talking to each other. So, every time that one of these balls bouncing around here intersects with one another, they'll turn that lovely red color that we had before. All this does is it just boop, draws a bunch of balls, and then they bounce around, right? Uh, the the one other thing that we can do that I didn't mention in that previous video is that we can pass an entire object into into another one as an argument. And so I'm going to do that in this example. You'll see here I've got an array called movers, and then here I'm populating the array. I'm just, this is just a little bit to space them out some. You can change that around to whatever you like. Inside of the draw loop, I'm just saying I'm iterating through every item in the array. That's what movers.length gives me. And then I'm rendering and updating each of these. And it's just doing like that wall checking thing to bounce around. Inside of the constructor, I've got the RGB values, something for the radius. I'm also, got something for direction here. Inside of the update, updating the position with the direction. This is my wall checker right here. So I rolled that into the update, and I didn't need another specific function for that. And then here I'm drawing it and I'm rendering it. And now what I've done is I've included this new function inside of here. And this function has that same purpose as that chunk of code in the previous video. So you can see here it's saying if the distance between this object's center point and another object's center point are less than the two radii added together, then there's a collision. Otherwise, there's not. And you can see what I'm doing here is I'm returning true or false back into my main program. So when I refer to object.intersects, I'm going to pass it a value of another object, and then I'm going to return something back into my main program. So I'm asking the question, are these two things running into one another? Do they overlap? If so, then yes, and we'll do something with it. If not, no, and we'll do something else with it. So the way that this looks in practice is like this. We've got our loop right here that everything's going through. And what we'll do is when we loop through this, we want to loop through not only every ball, but then we want to loop through every other ball to check to see if our ball, the one that we're looking at that moment in time, is touching any other one. Now, this is kind of computationally inefficient, but you really only need to check every pairing once. Here we're doing it multiple times, but it works. That's good. We don't care about efficiency. We care about laziness, saving keystrokes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a variable called intersect, right? And I'm going to set this to false to start. Now notice this is inside of my for loop. So every time I go through, it's going to look at a new object. And for each new object, it's going to say, are you intersecting with something? Blah, 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 right? So now what we want to do is we want to loop through, we want to call this function intersects. We want to pass in all the other objects. Now we can do this with another for loop. So we get into this idea of nested for loops again, right? So I'm going to say for let j equal 0, j is less than movers, movers.length, length, j++. Cool. And so inside of here, This is where I would say, uh, you know, if uh, if movers I dot intersects movers j, then do something, right? So here we're saying if this is true, and I'll walk through this in just a second. If this is true, then then we can say intersect equals true. So we set this variable here, and then after that, still inside of this for loop here, right? What we'll do, so we can see it's still in here. After we do that, what we'll do is we'll say if intersect, and remember if we do a conditional without saying true or false, it's just we're saying is this true, right? So this right here is the equivalent of saying this, right? But true lazy programmer, we don't want to do that. We write this. So if intersect is true, then we say movers.I dot r equals 255, and then we would say else movers I r is 100. So save this, and we look at it, and look at that, they're all always true. Now, the reason that this is happening, and the reason that they're all always red, and that this is always evaluating as true, has to do with this line right here. So we're going through every element inside of our array, and then inside of there we're checking every other element. We're checking all the elements inside of our array again. So at some point in time, I and j are going to be the same. So ball number 0 is going to check to see if it's close to ball number 0, and since their x and y are the same, we're always going to be evaluating this as true. So we want to say right here, if I does not equal j and movers intersects movers, then do this, right? And so now we can see when these intersect with one another, they turn red. When they aren't, they stay their own color, right? So it's this line right here that calls this function right here. And all we're doing is we're saying if these two are not equal, so we're not looking at the same ball twice, and ball number 1 intersects ball number 2, then it's true, and we change the color, blah, blah, blah. Now, you can see right here, all I'm doing is, when I say movers braces j, brackets j, square brackets, what I'm doing is I'm passing the whole object into this function right here. So otherball contains that entire object. So then I could say otherball.x, otherball.y, otherball.radius. I could, I could identify like when things are being checked. I could change its color. I could do all sorts of stuff, right? So this is the key sort of takeaway here, right? We can pass objects into other objects, and at the same time, if we're doing this, we don't want to be checking ourselves, right? Again, it's kind of inefficient, but then also it's always going to evaluate as true. So I'm going to put a pin in this right here. I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how you can do something like this, but then have introduce some sort of like additional variance in this through user interaction.